He climbed the stairs to the spare bedroom, pulled 2 suitcases from underneath the bed and placed them on it. They were empty and he opened them both. He had been putting this off. It was something he knew he had to do, but he felt a stab of regret but knew he had to get on with it. Julian went to the wardrobe and before opening it looked at himself in the full-length mirror attached to the front of the door. Getting on, he thought as he looked at the old man staring back at him. He began with the dresses, removing them one by one, folding them ever so carefully and placing them with great care in the larger suitcase. Every time he laid one in the suitcase, he would think back to the last time he had worn it, or how often he had worn it and on the rare occasions who he had been with when he had worn it. What was he on about? It was always with Sarah. Next came his coats. The gabardine was his favorite, 3/4 length that once showed his nylon legs to advantage, and there was something thrilling about wrapping that belt tight around his waist. He had not bothered with nylon stockings in years. Too much effort for him now attaching them to a suspender belt. But how he had enjoyed it in years gone by. Next to go into the case were his small collection of skirts, no short ones like he used to love wearing. These were what he called sensible, knee length of even below the knee. He only possessed 1 pair of slacks. If he was dressing up, then dressing up in trousers had never appealed to him much. He realized that when he added his sweaters they were going to fill up the case. But once again each and every one he placed on top of the dresses, skirts and coats brought back memories that he knew were precious for him. The white V-neck, oh my, over that bra that gave him just about enough cleavage to make it almost believable. Sarah with her arm around him and her hand playing with his nipple. Reluctantly he closed the lid on all his memories and opened the smaller of the suitcases. He crossed over to the dresser and again the mirror where he used to do his face informed him that age had caught up. In the drawers here, just like the skirts, the underwear he was filling up the case with now were nothing like he had once loved to wear. It was all about comfort. Full cotton briefs that covered everything, although he did note with a smile that there was still a lot of pink in amongst them. Always his favorite color. He took one more look at the smaller case, taking in the contents of his nighties, knickers, bras, tights, a couple of scarves, his fluffy slippers and of course his small collection of shoes, no heels anymore, too dangerous at his age, and he also closed it with a massive sigh that surprised him. Once more he went to the wardrobe and brought out the vanity case. Should he take this also to Mary's? He knew how much he had spent on its contents, a small fortune. Good makeup did not come cheap. In fact, he knew that what all 3 cases contained was worth thousands. He was not about to just chuck them. Everything he had packed was in the best, in fact, almost new condition. He would bring everything over to Mary and tell her they had belonged to Sarah. If there was anything she liked she was to keep, everything else could go to the second-hand store. Everything except his own and Sarah's jewelry. It took him 2 trips to get the cases to the life out of the building and to his car. Finally sorted, he left the city and headed out to the countryside where Mary and Jack and bought a lifestyle block just 2 years before Jack passed on. Made no sense to Julian at the time. Why move out of an apartment in town and live in a 12-acre mini farm that required lots of work to maintain in your retirement years? Mary was living out there on her own and had been for the last 8 years, and he felt just a little bit guilty that he had not been out to check up on her. An age thing maybe. But they had not caught up since Jack's funeral, and before that it was Sarah's. That was 10 years previous. Even at 80, Julian was not worried about the 2.5-hour drive. He tuned into a 60s music station and was off. He had called Mary earlier in the week and said he was going to come out and call on her, if that was okay with her. She told him to bring his PJs and it would be really great after all this time to catch up. She said he was to spend a few nights, or else. Typical Mary, still assertive. Mary was 75 and had been widowed for some time now. She had sounded really excited, if that's possible at 75, with the news that Julian was about to come out and visit. Visitors had been few and far between since Jack passed on. She was already waiting at the front door as Julian was pulling into the drive. She descended the steps and had Julian in a bear hug the moment he stepped out of his vehicle. "It's so good to see you, it's been far too long." She looked down on him from her lofty 5 feet 11 inches, taking his chin in her hand. "You look great, not a day over 90. "I've always loved your sense of humor, Mary," he laughed. Looking up from his 5 feet 7 inches, he said, "You have not changed a bit since I last saw you. You look great. Come inside, I've got the coffee on, or there is beer in the fridge, bought specially. Let me get the stuff from the car first." He noticed she did that trick of hers of lifting one eyebrow as she watched him remove the 3 cases. "Julian, I said bring your PJs so you could maybe spend a night or 2 and save you driving back to town. I did not say you could move in." No. I went through the wardrobe back at the apartment and collected some of Sarah's things, thought maybe you might want go through them." Here Mary raised both eyebrows. She remembered going through all of Sarah's stuff after she died, and what she, Lou and Kathy did not want at the time went to the hospice shop. She said nothing, just picked up the 2 biggest cases and told him to follow. Despite it been years since they had seen each other, they managed to chat as if it was only yesterday for almost 2 hours before any mention was made of the contents of the cases. She noticed Julian was slightly nervous as he opened them, just a few dresses and things. He pretended to laugh. "Oh, Julian, these are just beautiful, and all with designer labels. There's a small fortune here." "Thank you," he managed, and then realized that was not the reply he meant to give. "But there's a small problem, and by small I mean small literally. I, just like Sarah was, am a size 16. These beautiful clothes are for a much smaller woman, I would say a 10 or 12. "I had not realized," he stammered. Now Jillian had been Sarah's name for Julian when he cross-dressed. "Come clean, Julian, these beautiful items are yours. We all knew you loved to dress up and become Sarah's little house fairy." The mention of the name Jillian made his heart flutter, not good for an 80-year-old, and he could hardly believe it when he felt his face burn. "It's okay, Jillian, we'll take the bags up to the room I have prepared for you. Then I will make a call to the Italian restaurant down in the village and get them to deliver us dinner." With that, she picked up both cases and headed for the stairs. "You grab your vanity case and I'll show you where you will be sleeping." In a state of shock, he did as he was told. An hour later they were sitting down to a spicy pasta which Julian knew would give him heartburn and have him up half the night. But the way the conversation had been going, he did not wish to complain. Mary informed him that they were all aware of his little fetish. Sarah had always kept them informed of his girly ways. Apparently she had boasted about never having to do any housework. She had her little submissive Jillian for that. "She called you her little fairy," Mary smiled and winked at him. He had not felt this unsettled in many years, and getting up from the table told her that he was not capable of drinking like he used to, and the few wines they had had with the meal had gone straight to his head, and excused himself. "By the way, while you were washing up, forgive me, but I left out one of your nighties for you so you will not have to go rummaging for one. Sleep tight, Jillian, we have a big day ahead of us tomorrow," she told him as she wished him a good night. Julian had put so much effort into packing his female clothes that he had forgotten to bring anything for himself, so not for the first time he put on a nightie and climbed between the sheets. Next morning. "Ah, you're up. About time, sleepyhead. It's country hours out here, not that get up late town time you keep." She was sitting at the table with the newspaper spread before her, dressed as if going out for a hike. Check shirt, jeans, and work boots. Julian looked at the clock over the stove. It read 7 o'clock a.m. In town he never rose before 8. He was wearing a powder blue nightgown he had found mysteriously at the foot of his bed, which was obviously Mary's, as it almost long enough on him to sweep the floor. He had been tempted to don a clean pair of knickers that he had packed yesterday, but in the end decided as he would be heading home today the same pair of boxers would do. The bread is in the cupboard, the toaster is on the bench, the kettle needs filling and plugging in, coffee is in the container beside the plunger, and the eggs are with the milk in the fridge. The pot is down below sink. I think we will have scrambled eggs, so what are you waiting for, Jillian? Mary smiled to herself and was really interested seeing how Julian would react to her commands. The mention of Jillian once again made his heart flutter. He had had a terrible night, heartburn had kept him awake, and his mind was racing with the knowledge that they all knew he cross-dressed. Chop, chop, Jillian, remember breakfast, coffee first, I need coffee. I love a cup while I'm reading the paper. Hard to believe that they can get it out here before I'm out of bed. I may live out here in the wilderness, but I like to know what's going on in the world. The morning TV news shows are diabolical. Also, unlike the kids of today, reading the news from a computer screen is not something I wish to get used to. Give me the real printed word any day. For goodness sake, Julian, stop staring and get the coffee on. Oh, by the way, after you retired to bed, I contacted both Lou and Kathy and invited them here. They both seemed delighted to hear you were staying over and were keen as. They should be here sometime afternoon. It's been so long since I had an all-girls weekend, it will be so much fun. Julian knocked over the coffee plunger. That's okay, love, just clean up and make more. Lou and Kathy had been part of what they used to call the tribe. Sarah and Julian, Mary and Jack, Lou and Peter, Kathy and Mark. The parties, the trips away, the trips they had without leaving home, the drinking, the clubbing had lasted probably longer than they should have, but at the time they were well up for it. All history now. Lou was now 72 and Kathy 73, they were both divorced and had been for almost 20 years. What had become of Peter and Mark they did not know or care, as they had both ended up better off than they had been when married. Julian and Sarah had always known where they were but had kept that to themselves. Julian was not looking forward to seeing either of them. Lou had a vicious mouth and Kathy was her aide-de-camp, always there to help her out, not that she ever needed it. He decided he was not brave enough and would tell Mary he was leaving early as he had a doctor's appointment back in town. No way, mister, Mary stared him down. You are staying put. I have no wish to be left out here alone with them too. Well, you should not have invited them. I know, but surely they have mellowed. We'll soon find out. Sure, but in the meantime let's have breakfast, and after you're finished cleaning up you get yourself into the shower and dressed, and whatever you want to by the way, and we'll head out for a stroll. 40 minutes later they were wandering along country roads. He was wearing the clothes he had arrived except for a clean pair of pink cotton panties. Mary's invitation to wear whatever he wished struck a chord. She was still in the check shirt, jeans and boots, which Julian thought was very masculine. When did it all start? She asked him. What start? The dressing up, of course. Right now he felt it had been a mistake to be wearing panties. So long ago I cannot recall, he replied. But why, and more importantly how? It began with an arm wrestle. That makes no sense at all. Sarah came up with this game that whoever lost the arm wrestle would do the dishes. She was always bigger and stronger, and if you remember back then she had taken up weightlifting. Well, she won all the time. She enjoyed winning, enjoyed being stronger. From there it just progressed, he continued. She bought a frilly apron and it became whoever lost the wrestle would wear the frilly apron while doing the dishes. I suppose I could have put a stop to it then and there, but I sort of enjoyed our games and it always led to great sex. She really did bulk up when she got into weightlifting, Mary said. So when did the whole sissy thing and full undressing happen? It was all so gradual that I never noticed, he continued. Our arm wrestling turned into actual wrestling. She would get me in a headlock and demand I surrender on the condition that from now on I would wear women's panties. I suppose I was a bit of a pushover because soon I was wearing dresses and high heels at home and had literally turned into the housewife. One tough lady. You are not kidding, but then James and little Sarah came along, and for the next 20 years, other than times we were alone, I wore men's clothes over ladies' underwear. I still did most of the housework and the cooking. The kids did not seem to see anything wrong with Daddy doing housework. But as soon as they left home, she insisted I revert to, as you mentioned earlier, to being her little fairy. I did it willingly, Mary. I loved Sarah, and I guess I have always had a submissive nature, so pleasing her was all important. You miss her just as I miss Jack, but it must get lonely all alone in that apartment, Julian. I know I am very lonely out here. I wonder if you would consider living out here with me. No commitments. Think about a trial. I'm sure the fresh air would do me good, and you are right, I am more than a bit lonely. I seem to spend my time these days wandering from room to room and then asking myself why I came into that particular room, a head-scratcher. Let me think about it. Oh, by the way, I know why you got in touch and brought the clothes with you. I thought about it last night. At 80 you have had thoughts of passing away. None of us go on forever, and you have decided to get rid of your stash because when you do move on you don't want anybody finding all that pretty underwear and fancy dresses and put two and two together, am I right? As always, Mary, yes, he answered. Especially the kids and the grandkids, it would be unfair to them. See, there's another good reason for considering my proposition. The clothes could belong here with you, and it's not as if I care a fig what you wear. There could even be benefits in it for me too. I've seriously been considering getting in a maid to help about the place. You could fill that role, she said as she poked him with her elbow. The two of us could handle it. He had gone silent, so she continued, just think about, Jillian could make a return. But really it could be more about us keeping each other company. Anyway, it's time to get back. Your two favorite ladies will be arriving soon. Whatever was I thinking by inviting them and telling them you were here? I am so sorry, Julian. It's okay, he replied. I've survived this far, I'll survive them. We do not have to meet them, Mary said. What do you mean? Follow me, she said, and led him by way of the line of trees that bordered her property till they could see her front door. Sure enough, there were Lou and Kathy just visible through the cigarette smoke in Mary's porchway. They stared at them for about a minute, and like two school children with massive smiles, they both shook their heads. Could you handle another 15-minute walk? There's a really nice restaurant in the village that do a great lunch and have a top collar, Mary prompted. With no hesitation, and remembering an old phrase, he replied, lead on Macduff. Like the two conspirators that they now were, they laughed all the way to the village. Mary was well known at the restaurant and was asked if she was going to have her usual. He said once again, remembering a line from a movie, said, I'll have what she's having. They laughed about their ability in remembering certain things, especially they both agreed how annoying it was when during a conversation not being able to remember someone's name or what something was called, and then 30 minutes later it would come back to them. Just then the great time they were having in each other's company was shattered. Should have stopped off here first, Kathy, this one, she pointed at Mary, and that, whatever you want to call it, this time pointing at Julian, were always going to put themselves before us. Do you know we have been waiting an hour outside your place, Mary? Kathy continued. It's not good enough. We drove all the way from town just to see you and Sissy Boy here. Please, Mary said, there is no need to be nasty. You did say sometime afternoon. Look, just sit down, the pair of you, and order some lunch, I'll buy. And they did. They both ordered oysters, the most expensive item on the menu. The Pinot Gris was not cheap either. They drank 2 bottles. It did not make them any happier. They chipped away at Julian on how they all knew what he was and how Sarah delighted in telling them all about him. Then there was the day they spotted him on the shore wearing that short brown trench coat and the matching Fonterra hat over the blonde curly wig, the black boots and the nylons. I swear, if Sarah had not pointed you out, I would have been sure that it was some hooker plying her trade. For all I know, Julian, you were on the make. Remember how they would tease you? Surely you knew that they knew. How Mark always called you Jules and Peter was always telling you not to get your knickers in a twist because he knew you were wearing a pair. Kathy's laugh was a harsh smoker's laugh. The lunch continued like this until Mary turned and looked them both in the eye. That's enough from you two. Julian does not have to put up with this. He is more of a man than Peter or Mark ever were, I can tell you that. My Peter was a real man, Lou said, not like the little fairy sitting here. Julian finally spoke. Tell me, Lou, Kathy, do you know where Peter and Mark are at present? I could not care where the cheating bastard is now, Kathy said. You may not want to know, but I am about to tell you. Your husbands have been living together in a relationship for the past 20 years and before that had been having it off behind your backs for almost 30. Sarah had caught them in bed together when she came to pick me up from one of our golfing trips. She walked into the wrong motel room and caught them going at it hell for leather. Surely you both remember how Sarah could have them running after her all evening when we were all together. After all, she had told you everything about me, which by the way I have only just discovered, but if she would inform everyone what I got up to, your husbands must have been more than a little worried what she might say about them. But she never did. You lying little bitch, Lou screamed as she attempted to hit Julian across the face with the wine glass she had in her hand. She missed him, but he got drenched and the glass slipped from her hand and fell and broke on the floor. The girl behind the bar had been watching and was there immediately. She knew Mary as a regular and took her part. I'm going to have to ask you to leave, madam, she told Lou. Lou protested, but the younger girl had no trouble leading a drunken Lou to the door. Kathy fell over as she tried to assist Lou, and the manager who by now had arrived picked her up, and soon she was standing on the pavement outside with Lou. I think you should both remain here for a few minutes before departing, the manager told them when he came back into the restaurant. I suggest you both have a coffee on the house and wait until those 2 crazy bitches go. Please excuse my language, Mary, and he walked off to order for them with a smile. Nothing like a bit of excitement now and then, even if it is amongst senior citizens, he told the girl behind the bar. Later. Back at Mary's, they both had a feeling of accomplishment. Just like the restaurant manager, they enjoyed the bit of excitement. Makes you feel alive, said Mary. She could have slashed me with that wine glass. It would have improved your looks, you old codger. Even an old tranny would not look too good with a scare running the length of his face. Oh, I'm not sure you could ever look bad. And by the way, out of curiosity, that day so many years ago that Sarah brought us all to the cafe by the promenade where we spied you, what were you wearing beneath that trench coat? I remember feeling so sexy. Well, all I had on was a beautiful white lacy bra and matching panties, also from the same set as suspender belt to hold up my nylons, that was it. Oh, Julian, you made a magnificent Jillian. I was so jealous of Sarah. All I had at home was old dependable and but very boring Jack. He knew about you, of course, but always considered you a friend first. I know, Julian answered. I am going to turn in. I think I've had enough excitement for one day. Please, Julian, think seriously about my offer of moving in. The company would be lovely, Mary called after him. Before climbing into bed, Julian unpacked his cases and hung up what belonged in the wardrobe of Mary's spare room and filled up the dresser with what belonged there.